Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Love Foundry podcast. This is Sebastian, Dan, and Taylor. It is the 5th of December, 2024. Today we're going to be talking about what is love. We're going to attempt to define this concept for you.
Yeah, good idea. Go ahead, Taylor. You want to start it off with that? Or Seb, you want to give it? I'd like to say one thing for people who come in. This podcast has we're kind of a one-trick pony. This podcast is about how human beings can empower themselves with the aspect of life itself, the thing that runs the universe, that aspect of that great nature that is called love is an energy unique to itself in its own right. And it empowers the whole thing. It empowers galaxies to rotate. It empowers atoms to rotate. It empowers human beings to function. So how do we harness that into ourselves as a power, empowering us with it in a way that we have the advantage of its unique properties? So let's talk a little about the properties of love, which without empowering ourselves with it, we are denied those properties. And this is a difficult place for the human race because it's been without them so long that it's accepted the condition. Like a bunch of blind moles, we've been blind so long, we accept the condition of blindness, never realizing we could have sight anytime we wanted it. So Seb, how do you see that? Does that resonate with you as a reality or what?
Yeah, no, it does. But I would also like, before we get into the properties of love, I think it would be good to define what it is we're talking about when we're referring to love, because I think a lot of people listening to this, everyone has an idea what love is. And we're using it in a very specific way that may not be the way that people would naturally think what love is. So I think that's an important place, just so that people can kind of get their minds that, I mean, maybe we should talk about what it isn't that we're talking about, but maybe that's the wrong place to start.
No easy way to get into the subject because everybody has opinions on the subject. Yeah. And by the way, everybody's right. The thing about life that's frustrating is that everybody's right because they're looking at it from a specific point of view. Sometimes the point of view is really narrow, like a foot fetish. The foot fetish is a kind of love, whether we like it or not. You blinked your eyes there, Taylor. Do you have a foot fetish or do you have a
Well, I love my feet.
Okay, well, that's a start. I think your feet are great. So my point is that whatever gives us a sense of connection on some level, some way, is love. Now, I may not be into feet or painting or petting the back of a frog or some other thing that someone else really feels good about, but it's still not my place to say this is or isn't love, because they're gaining some connection to an energy of union, unity, oneness in some way with something or someone through the experience they're having. And for them, they say, what is that love? Well, yeah. Now, if you expand it to complete union with everything, is that love? Yeah. So how are we going to name it in such a way that we can have a discussion about empowering yourself with it? Because that's what we're looking at. We're not judging anybody else's idea of it or right or wrongness of any of that, because I don't think that that's relevant. So where do you want to start, Seb? What's your idea of love?
Well, for me, My greatest awareness of it, I get it through. I'll feel it come into presence in certain times. So that's I mean that's my only way of knowing when um it's in the space, it's working. And for me, I have to find that sort of creative
Don't move
flow.
forward and back. Don't move forward and back too quickly because it takes you in and out of focus.
Sorry.
I'm just mentioning it.
Yeah, so I have to kind of find that flow, and that can come through something that's creative. It can come through the need of like the moment when I'm with people or with a person, and tapping into that. And it's, for me, it feels very different than life when I'm not connected to that.
Okay. That's pretty vague.
It's pretty
But
vague.
it's personal. Well, that's only because it's personal to you. If it's but I think other people can relate to that experience of having that sensation, the sensation of something arriving in the room that, by its arrival, informs you that love is in the room, and when it leaves, love has left the room. As a pure energy, an energy of connection to something. Do you have a feeling that when it arrives, it connects you to something?
Yeah, no, totally.
What's the sensation you have that makes you like it rather than reject it?
Well, it feels more like living than when I'm not. It's like the connection that you're talking about is like a connection with everything, and often a greater connection with the let's say it's a person that I'm trying to connect with in that moment, and that's the inspiration that comes. I feel more connected to that person and what it is that the need is that they might be going through, but I feel connected to everything. It's almost like time slows down and everything is a bit more vibrant, and there's a connectedness to that energy that is just, it's hard to explain, but just it you don't feel alone anymore. You know, you feel, I can't explain it. Well,
I know, but I mean, in spite of the fact it sounds a bit like taking mushrooms or something, I get what you're trying to, where you're trying to go with it.
much better
And,
than mushrooms.
all right, well, that's good. So, Taylor, you concur with Seb's
Oh well,
idea?
I don't disagree at all. I experience it as well as like an inclusiveness, like an kind of like a being electrified. I mean, if you're talking about the sensation of it, it's like, I mean, you absolutely know it when it's there. It's one of those things that it's like, you know when it's hot outside. It definitely impacts your senses and your experience, and it is a feeling of inclusiveness, like that unity that Seb was talking about. I get that same sort of experience where I'm animated with life. It's not something outside. It's like you look at life, and when it's in you and it's outside of you and it's all at one experience, it's a different connection to the whole thing. And it's kind of like what you defined when we were opening this podcast up. It's this, it's this energy that's an aspect of life itself, and you experience it inside yourself as that. You feel included in the whole thing.
How do you expect that to grow in you? Not the
wave. I think it's a consciousness experience. More and more, I think it's the awareness of it there. It grows it in me. The more that I put it in my awareness, the more that I keep my attention towards it, it meets you. It meets you more than halfway. If you just put your attention there a little bit, it comes. But to get that going is a different thing.
All right. Well, that's a really important aspect. If we're going to empower ourselves with love, we're going to have to pay attention to how to do it. And part of it we're have this little, we're going to do this in a very reasonably short time, but this particular conversation we're having is about defining, and so that you can have a sense of knowingness when its presence is in your space. Because empowering yourself with something means having some sort of sense of it. Now, it doesn't matter which sense it is. You can have a sense of presence, like Seb's talking about, and you're agreeing with, or you could see a color flood the room, or you could have a sense of sound. It doesn't have to be an audible sound. It can be a presence of expansion of hearing, or expansion of sensation of touch. So there isn't any one of our senses that love can't come through. The fact that it's not roaring through all of our senses tells you how unconscious of love we actually are as a human race. And even both of your guys' description to me is the description of someone who's paid attention in their life to the idea of what love is and how it feels, how it impacts you.
That's once I kind of got more awareness in it. But when it was starting out, I wanted to add, because I didn't start out that way. How I started out was, it was like a heart sense. And I just wanted to throw that in there, because until you start gaining awareness of it and you start paying attention to it, you don't really necessarily pick up those sensations, because you haven't objectified it enough to have that experience, or I hadn't. And when it started out with like a heart feeling. All of a sudden my heart felt like a peace, or
would you call that a feeling, or would you differentiate it from feeling?
Not a feeling in the sense like not an emotional feeling, but a feeling, yes.
So it's coming
just to make that distinction. So it's coming through the senses, but it's not emotional. It's not like I feel, oh, I'm in love, or it's not emotional. It's a feeling that comes over my heart, but it's a sensory experience.
Yeah, it's been described as a sense of expansion. When the ache in the heart, and this happens when we lose love with someone. We think we're going towards love with someone, and they shut the door on it. Something happens and the door shuts, and you feel this.
Sucks.
It does suck, that's for sure. And you feel this sensation in the heart of pain, and that's been described as the heart striving to expand, to include something that feels like it's losing, which of course is part of the illusion of love. The illusions of love are far greater than our reality of love right now, until we get it. Once we get it, then we start to recognize our empowerment of love is exceeding our illusions of love. And it's far more real and far more accurate and far more true. And so we start going in that direction rather than pursuing the illusion of it. In other words, trying to get love from someone else rather than giving love to someone. The standard procedure in the world is expecting to get love from someone else, as if you were short of it somehow. It's like trying to give $100 to Elon Musk. He doesn't really need your money. So if you tried to pay for lunch, he'd probably say, nah, I'll get this one, because he doesn't need $10 or $15. He wakes up every morning with a few $100 million, probably more, in his account. So the question is, how do we shift ourselves over to that basis of reality instead of the illusion that we don't have enough love already? And I never feel like I have enough. I have to admit it, because I don't have the power to change the things I'd like to change with love. It is the creative power of the universe. I don't think anything in this universe is created without it. Yeah. And maybe nothing's destroyed without it either. We'll have to check that out as we go along. But the power to create everything you need in your life requires the creative power of life itself, which is love. A lot of times we don't create something, we just get it. We need to get money. We got to go get a job. We got to do some work. They're going to pay us some money. That's not creating money. That's getting it the hard way. We work for it. We earn it. However, what you need, love can create. And you think, well, how can it do that? I don't know how to do that. Well, no, you don't, but love does, which tells you what a deficit we have. Anything that's ill health in your body, which we all have to some degree, is the absence of love. So if you want to cure that, if you want to remove that ill health, what part of love are you denying yourself? That's how it shows up in your life is a disease of some kind. And it doesn't matter what kind of disease it is. It doesn't matter how you think about it. You can say he was born that way. I don't care. We have created it by denying the existence of love in our experience. And then so there we have it, a deficiency in a specific way, one kind or another. And so how was you going to cure that deficiency? Empower yourself with love. Outside of people who just live in states of denial about the grace of life and the goodness of life, most people would probably admit that they thought love could pretty much cure anything. Not sure how, or not sure how it works, or why it works, or even who set it loose to work. But we feel that if love entered with sufficient energy and presence, there's very little that couldn't be fixed in our lives. And I think that I don't think this is based entirely on the idea of something that happened in a biblical story like Jesus, although I think that's what was going on there. I think love was doing a lot of things, showing what it can do, showing what its cooperation with a human being looks like. So we're taking the premise here that it can do all those things and far more, by the way. We can't even imagine what love can do. So, and also the idea that we can empower ourselves with it. So what are we doing to disempower love in our lives? Because I don't think we have to earn it. I don't think you have to pray to anything to get it. I don't think you have to be on good terms with some imaginary God, although I do think you have to be on good terms with life, because life is providing love. And if you're angry at life, if you're denying life, if you're denying the principles that make us exist, then you may be interfering with your ability to be on harmony with love. So we can block it, we can shove it out, we can be angry at life and deny it, but how do we reverse all of that and empower ourselves with it? That's the question we have. And I think now we're going to talk about that because this is not a hard thing to do. The only hard thing to do is stop denying it, stop unbelieving. See, belief in love is one thing, unbelief is another. Unbelief just shoves it out the door. I don't believe I deserve it. I don't believe I can have it. I don't believe I'm worthy of it. I don't believe that God loves me. I don't believe whatever your unbelief, it works. You're a creator yourself. So we're doing a lot of that. So we have to examine that. But I think it's good to take a moment to look at what it is in its impact on humans, on impact on nature, impact on the universe, maybe. And so what are the common properties that we associate with that are unique to love? Nothing else has these properties. Intelligence doesn't have it. Will doesn't have it. Nothing else in the universe has these particular creative properties. What do you think they would be? Do you have an opinion about that, Seb? I don't know why your camera's so sensitive, Seb, but no matter what you do to move, you're going in and out of focus.
I know.
Constantly.
I think it might be the lighting, because it's obviously nighttime. It doesn't do it during the day. We'll just have to live with it, unfortunately. Well, I mean, the properties. We've spoken about some of this before. Transformation, transmutation, creation, And help me with the last one, Taylor.
Unity and
Unity.
And grace, graciousness.
Oh yeah. But tell me, and I think all of that is true. What I have experienced is I think more than anything is the unity in the creation aspect, and it's probably transformation too, actually. But I can feel it change the space when it's really strong. And I feel connected with the space, and I can feel the space changing. And yeah.
Same with attraction. Okay. I've noticed that, people talk a lot about the law of attraction. I've noticed that you attract into your life. I don't know if that's necessarily creation or transformation.
No. I think that in the esoteric world, which is where the big brains are, the big souls are, or whatever, they talk about love not in the terms of humans talk about it, but they talk about it in terms of the law of attraction and repulsion. Because remember, attraction and repulsion are two aspects of the same thing.
And that one I think doesn't get enough. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I don't think that one gets enough press. The repulsion, because it's like amazing the things that you keep at bay.
Exactly.
With love. The
it's
things that don't come into your life,
because we're holding something at bay, as you say, or away from us, doesn't mean we don't love it. It means we don't want it in our face. And this I think, as we advance in consciousness beyond the purely material world into the world where love rules all things, the world of angelic being and those places like that, then you realize there are no fixed boundaries. Your skin is not a boundary. It looks like it in the material world. Is that you? Who's that? Your
I think there's a bird out the window.
It's a bird. I thought it might be a bird. So the boundaries that exist in the material world are not the boundaries that exist in the world where love dominates everything, where love is receptive, where every life is receptive to love. Then you don't need a boundary, because the law of love itself is creating all of the boundaries for you. So it's holding away at exactly the right distance, proportion, balance, and condition what you don't need, according to your need, according to what you are and what you are experiencing and the way you're living. And it's attracting in at exactly the right proportion everything you do need, everything you do want, everything you need to be in touch with. And that is love loving you, both positively and negatively, in the sense of attraction and repulsion. So we're kind of on our own in the material world, where you have to decide, this is violating my personal space, back off. And so that's not necessary in a love-based environment. And this is not what we would call a fully love-based environment, because matter doesn't respond to love. It can't support you in that attraction and rejection. You have to decide. When we've gotten used to that, we've learned how to live in that world. Well, what we're talking about now is changing the laws of our world to include love in a way that we never have done before. By empowering yourself with it, you turn it loose to impact your life in ways that change the game for you. Now, that may not seem like an appropriate thing for you to do. You may not want to do that. But I think if you learn something about love, learn something about how it works, you might find there are some advantages to it. And transformation, transmutation, which is an entirely different subject from transformation, and unity are things that we have to actually look at and go, wow, those are really important things. And grace is just the state of being one with love without rejection or hostility or even maybe full acceptance. I don't know. It just puts us in a place where that's just filling the space, grace itself.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in being a cheerleader for love. We have to come to it as something I could be a cheerleader for gravity, but
Dan
what
is a
would be
cheerleader. It's just a funny image to conjure.
No, that's not my forte. But being a cheerleader for gravity would be great, but gravity doesn't really care. It's going to be gravity no matter what I like or don't like or want or don't want. The question is, can I use it? By being conscious of gravity, can I do something with it to make it more useful in my experience and make it more valuable in my life? And if love can make your life more valuable by defining it, by opening a relationship to it, by becoming more at one with it, then we would want to do that. But if you don't know what it is, or don't have a sense of its source or its impact or how you're going to get along with it, then why would you? So we have to start with that, huh?
When you say sense of its source, now, when you talk about source of love, you're talking about from this aspect of life itself, or?
Well, if you think that's where it comes from, some people don't. Freud thought love was an emotion. A lot of people feel the same way about it. Emotions are not coming out of the fountainhead of life. Life isn't jealous of you. Life isn't resentful of you. Life isn't coy with you. Life is life. That's coming out of the source. Now, if we differentiate those energies into specific feelings about things, you being jealous of your neighbor or being happy or angry or any of those things, then we have created that type of energetic response to certain situation. We've done that. But love is not doing that. It's not creating emotions. It's actually, love's been described as perfect emotion. If you perfect emotion, you arrive at love. You raise the vibration of emotion to such a level that it enters into something that is 100% positive, because everything else is just less than that. Anger is a relationship between you and something. But if you keep raising the vibration of that relationship between you and that something through understanding and experience and time and patience and reward, eventually you will come to love with that thing. And anger will be gone and love will be present. There's been a lot of things that I was angry at that later I came to realize I'd loved them, loved that thing. And it's a graduation of frequencies, really, sort of. So I think that what comes out of life is love itself. And if we can't embrace it in its pure form, then we have to learn how to get to that through the emotions. I think the emotions give you some experience with feeling until finally you can graduate yourself to the level of love and let go of all the other feelings. Now, that sounds impossible when you think of the things that you're mad at, angry at, don't like, who you don't like, what you don't like. But I think all of the spiritually philosophical people will tell you, and I suppose this includes the better Christian versions and the better Buddhist versions and certain other versions, they will tell you that in the end, you come to love it, because that's the power that transforms it, transmutes it, and unifies you with it, and takes away all of the negativity that has been separating you from it. So we're not talking about conduct, and we're not talking about people who do deliberate things to other people that make us not love them. we're looking at love itself and how it lives in the space with us. And if we can get around to a sense of recognizing that that is something other than what we thought it was, then we can begin to define it and say, I want that. I want more of that. And we can start to zero in on how it differentiates itself from other things. Now, it's easy to differentiate love from will if you take the time to slow down. Now, will in the sense of what you're willing for, what you're willing to, what you're willing to have. So will is an energy that acts forward in life, takes you to wherever you're going, but it doesn't really have any vibration in it about these other things like transformation, transmutation, unity, grace. We don't associate those things with will. You can will towards love, and that'll give you those things. Now, what does will have that you can use, that profitably use? Now, we have a negative version of will, people that apply will harmfully, which we all do. We can't help it. There's things we like, things we don't like. And energy escapes us the moment we see something we don't like. Our emotional energy escapes us towards that thing, to harm it, to reject it, to push it away, not to love it usually, because A, we don't know enough about governing our own will, and B, we don't know enough about love to know that that's the right. If you see something you don't like, the right way to touch it is with love. But why won't you do that? Well, people won't do that because they don't realize that that's the way in which you heal it. That's the way in which you perfect it, by loving it, because that's a power that love possesses. So if you knew that love had the power to transform something towards perfection, to transmute something towards perfection, to unify you with that thing in a perfect way, and to increase the level of grace in the space, then loving might make sense. But you've got to know that. You've got to know that that's potential, at least potential, to try it out. If you don't have a sense of potential for it, why would you do it? Well, there's a litany in the Sun Moves Northward, which says love is the only king, the only ruler, the only creator. Well, if that's true, that line may not be true, but if it is true, then that would be the thing you would want to use. So to do that, you're going to have to understand what that energy is and how to apply it. And are you equipped for it? And I think the thing that's amazing about every single human being is they're equipped to love. We're all equipped to love. But we haven't learned how. We haven't defined. We haven't built it into our experience sufficiently to use it. Now, we could ask ourselves why. We've had a few million years to grope around in the world, but there's a lot of things we haven't learned, and we're just beginning to learn. And so if this marvelous energy is here, then it would be great if we begin to apply it. And if it's available and it's free for anyone in nature, if life's offering it, we ought to take it in, don't you think? Now, if you think it will weaken you, then don't take it in. If you think, oh, if I took love in, then I would be weak. I would be run over by everybody. Somebody shows up to sell me a Bible at the door, and I wouldn't be able to say, no, I've got my own. I'd have to buy it because they're going to say, you want this Bible, don't you? This is what you need, don't you? You want a good relationship with God, don't you? This book is going to do that for you. This has got all the illustrations in it, so buy the book. And you go, okay, I'll buy the book. But if you think that love's not going to weaken you, then you might give it a look. But people are afraid of it because they think it will make them weak. Women particularly, I think, feel this way because of their experience with feeling, not with love, but with feeling. because feeling lacks the power of love. Love has immense power in it. If it really is the energy that set the spheres in motion, as they say, meaning the sphere of the universe, galaxies rotate. Those are the spheres that love sets in motion. That means it's a pretty powerful energy. So maybe if that energy is there, it won't weaken you. Maybe it will strengthen you and allow you to love something with such strength that it changes or transforms in your experience into something positive if it's looking negative. Well, how will we know? We haven't tried the stuff. There's not a love store down the street where we can go get a quart and see how we like it. So that's why we're here. We're here to define not just how to empower yourself with love, but why would you want to? You've got to define something to decide whether you want it in your life or not. And we do that with everybody we meet. We begin to define them according to our sense of how they act to decide whether you're going to include them in your life. And then when they don't act the way we want, we kick their ass out. Right, Taylor?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, that's right. So now Seb's never had a chance to do that because
They run first.
Yeah.
you got to get to first base in order to get to second. But I've been kicked out a time or two, so I get how that feels. I get how that looks. And so, not for any good reason, by the way, because we always think we're reasonable in our own mind. But none of us are figuring out, literally, in the human race, look at us. Look at us. I mean, look at what's going on in the world today. It's crazy what's going on in the world today, right now. But if everybody in the world understood this energy and allowed it into themselves and allowed themselves to apply it towards the situations they're all in, I mean, I don't know what's going on when you're looking at this particular video, but, you know, South Korea just went crazy. It's bad enough. Russia's crazy. Ukrainians are crazy. We're used to that. But now South Korea went crazy. Not North Korea, where Kim is a little bit whacked. But the president of South Korea suddenly leaps up and declares martial law and shoots himself in the foot. So the world's under pressure, and they're not meeting the problems of their day with love because they don't know how, and they don't believe it would be effective if they did know how. Many of them go to temples and they go to churches and they go to pray and they go to meditate and they do the things that are good to do, but they don't come out of those places with this power, with this amazing energy, which is already in them, by the way. Like Nasirata says, when you say, how do I find love? You know, why are you looking for something you haven't lost? It's so true. All these things, all these Buddhist catechisms, which sound so clever, are actually true. But so what if it doesn't give you what you need? So this energy is invisible. That's one of the problems with love is it's invisible in the material world. I don't think in vibrational worlds higher than the physical world, up where maybe the soul lives or spirit lives, if you're way up there in the attic. Somewhere else, love may be quite visible. It may be quite tangible. It may be obvious, like a sunset or something. But in this particular world in which our consciousness is located, in the human body, in a material world, that shit is invisible. You feel it, right, Seb? It comes in and you said, I sense when it arrives, and I get this sense of expansion and connection. But you can't see the stuff, can you?
No.
No.
I can't.
No, well, most of us can't. Now, we can give it a color because I think when love enters the bodies of certain beings, they radiate a light that gives a color to love.
Yeah.
And when sunlight passes through water in the sky, we end up with seeing 7 colors of the rainbow. Well, those colors are there. They're there all the time. but you don't see them in sunlight. You don't see even the sunlight. You just see the impact of the sunlight as it glares off of water and the side of a building, which is painted red. See, we see the impact of sunlight, but we don't see the sunlight itself until it shows us a color.
Mm.
Well, love's like that with emotions. You don't see the love, but you feel the anger because you suddenly are upset at something. So we're trying to get to the root of this energy that can move mountains, that can change everything in your life, that is available to you, and you are marvelously equipped to express it, to relate to it, to use it. So how would you define how to do that? Because it's tricky. It's a tricky job. Now, I think you can trick it. I think you can fool with love because it's such a responsive and intelligent energy, and it loves you because that's all love does is love. It's like oh, I think I'll love Seb. It's already doing it. It's already loving Seb. He's just not paying any attention to it. He's waiting around to find it. He thinks he has to maybe do something to do that. I don't think he does. I think you just have to become aware of it and trust it and act consistent with that trust and with that awareness, and there it'll perform miracles. But see, we don't trust it. We're not in harmony with its powers so sufficiently that we can just know it's going to work. Well, how are we going to empower ourselves with love if we don't find a way into that conversation? How are you going to make something invisible serve you in every positive possible way that it can come up with, which is endless, by the way? Love has endless solutions to every problem there is. And I had the solution before the problem occurred because it was only the absence of love that made the problem occur, like health. Got something wrong in your body? That's the absence of love. Perfect health is love. Perfect love is perfect health. So love already has the solution because you had perfect health and somehow lost it. And that's resulted in a disease of some kind. So if we know how to replace that blockage with love, it'll disappear. The ill health will disappear. Now, doctors don't know how to do that, so they're doing the best they can to fix the problem with things they have found that work with those problems, which most things that doctors do don't cure. The body will cure itself, and doctors know that. So when you break your elbow, it can put you in a cast and wait around for a little while, and your body will knit itself back together because it knows what to do. And if that's love doing the healing, well, that's great. But what we know is that it healed up. Now, if you interfere with that healing, then it might not heal naturally. So these are the things that we have to kind of work our way through as we approach empowering ourselves with love, so that we can begin to develop a sense of trust, which is the nature of faith. But remember, faith is the evidence of things not seen. You see, it's the substance of things hoped for. It's actually something. So faith will bridge us over to it, but if we don't have anything to bridge it over to, that the faith can link us to, because we haven't stopped to slow down enough to say, could this be real? Let me try this. So, and I'm just saying that that's how everybody starts out in life. Taylor, your kids are young. So we don't expect them to know how to do this. We don't expect them to be conscious of it, but it is working in their life, healing them up, giving them things, protecting them, doing stuff. But how are we going to become conscious of this? We have to grow into that by education. There's no educational system in the public that educates you to love, except your mom and your dad, if you're really lucky. They can educate you towards love if they know something about it. Now, Christianity was started out on the premise that love was important. What was the last line of the whole thing? A new commandment I give you, love one another, even as I have. Just the way I did it, you do it. But we just set that aside and went ahead and started preaching to each other about all of this because there wasn't a manual with it. That was the manual. So it's like, this must be more difficult than I thought because you can't write it down. In other words, they tried to turn it into a code of conduct. But you see, love doesn't obey a code of conduct. It's not bound by our rules. It's bound by its own rules. And while there's some things that are obvious, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that's a good golden rule. That's a good rule. But it doesn't guarantee love. Neither does an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's just guarantees revenge, doesn't it? Revenge is not love. And yet, it's there in our culture. So we got to figure this out if we're going to empower ourselves with it. And I don't think it's that difficult. And I work on empowering with love because I've already got a pretty good idea. It's a good idea. And some people already have this idea. It's like, I'm down for love. I get that it's a separate, specific energy of life. And I get that it has these marvelous qualities. And I want that. I want that in my life. Well, a lot of people don't have that. And just because you believe in a God of love doesn't mean you know what love is. I don't think Christians do because they mushed Christianity into the Old Testament. You've got this God called Jehovah. And yet you got this argument that God is love, and yet you got Jehovah doing all kinds of shit that isn't loving at all. At least to somebody. When you get smited by God, that's not a characterization of love. Damning you to hell for eternity is not exactly what I would call a loving act. I don't care what anybody else thinks about that. I think more about love than that it would do that. You have to think about, why is that necessary? What, love can't fix you? Love can't save you? Love can't prepare you? Well, there's all these split hair arguments in the church. Well, you'll go to purgatory for a while and then we'll give you a second shot at it, or whatever it is, however that goes. But I just think that that's all just trying to frame a conversation around something that never should have had it framed around it. I think the nature of God is a Jehovah character who smites people and damns people and creates favors for people and requires codes of conduct from people is not real. I don't see how that reality serves love. I just don't see it as something love needs. Because if you apply yourself to love and surrender to its healing properties and its gifts of unity and grace, all of that is eliminated as a necessity of concern. So let's think about that a little bit. Now, how would you decide, Taylor, that the energy that came in the room was love? What would indicate? I see the sun's coming in the back behind you there, which is great because you're in Maui and that's good sunshine.
There's always a
So,
connectivity, even in this conversation. It was like we were talking, and I was thinking about how, faith is like that bridge that carries you over. Where does faith and trust come into this, for someone that, you know, as an actual tool instead of some fallback cop out, it's like when it's actually alive and present in you, you know, and so things like that just show up. Things just show up. As soon as you're in that field of love, when I'm in the field of love and I'm experiencing it, things just show up, whether it's an impulse in your mind, whether it's a conscious thought that shows up to you, or whether it's even an emotion. Sometimes something will overcome you that gives you a sense of inspiration, or it fires up some passion in you. And sometimes it's not until after. And the other thing I wanted to point out was, it's everyone's looking for some grand gesture. But for me, in my experience, love it's always very subtle. It's, you have to, it'll never come in like that. It never comes in like a freight train. In my experience, it's always a very subtle, there's no other way to say it, but loving. There's a very subtle, loving presence to it that's gentle and kind. And it's not like this big forceful thing that comes over me. Sometimes it plays out that way, but it's a subtle thing in my experience with it.
okay. But when you fall in love, when you first fell in love, it can hit you like a freight train. Oh, you're right, though. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
First you're introduced to somebody, and then you kind of like them and you feel this attraction to them. And before you know it, you're buried in it. You're done. You're toast because
Or
it's
having a
got you.
baby. That
Now
too.
having a baby, yeah.
When
Well,
you
yeah,
hold your
having a
baby.
baby. Well, I
But
think
everything
that's
changes in that moment, but it's nothing like,
yeah. It is subtle, and that's why I
it's
say
subtle.
it's
It's a big
invisible.
thing, but it's
It's
subtle.
exactly. How can something that big be that subtle? Well, that's the miraculous nature of love. It is as big as the universe because
Mm-hmm.
it's not limited to you or me or our planet or our one little thing. That sunshine back there without love is going to stop. It's going to go out like a freaking candle in the dark. But it doesn't. It doesn't because the consistency of love, the consistency of the will to be and the will to grow and the will to live is there. But the love gives it the purpose for which it's doing it. And it's not going to go out on us. Now we all go, oh, the sun someday will go out in 4 billion years. Well, I think by that time we'll be pretty much free of this particular limitation. So it probably won't matter to us if the sun decides to move on to greener pastures. But I do think it's immense, and yet it's personal. It can be as subtle as the subtlest breath, and yet it can kick down the door. So all of these things are true
Impact.
about it. Yeah, it
Yeah,
can
the
have
impact.
impact. Oh, it can have impact, Art, because it's got the power of creation in it, and nothing can stop creation when it's propelled by love. I don't think.
Yeah.
So
I think
go ahead.
it can feel subtle, even though it can be really big and really impactful, because I think it's not limited to, but I think it will only go as far as you will allow. And because you're allowing, it's like you're meeting it there. So it never feels overpowering because it's never over like powering you. It's opening up to, you're opening up to where your limitations are with love. So it's like it's changing and expanding a lot, but it's like you met it to the point where you're willing to allow it into your life. So it doesn't feel like a force on top of you forcing you to do something any more than you want, because it's where you are comfortable with.
Well,
I don't
that
know.
brings in an aspect of this conversation which we haven't had, which is usually Taylor's job, but you've done it. You've opened up the box
So,
on this one, and it's important because what you're throwing out onto the table is like a tarot deck or something, you're throwing out the card that says free will on it. And free will is your ability to say, whoa, that's enough. And we have a real deep thing in us that says, hey, don't go past my free will. And yet people do it all the time with each other. And they do it in harmful ways and helpless ways and cruel ways and just rude ways. Anytime we go past someone's free will, even for their own fucking good, which is the best reason we have for doing this, for his own damn good. And every parent like you, Taylor, has this problem to deal with because your kids are out there just doing something reckless. And you have to say, hold on a minute, let's reel this in. Well, I don't want to. I've been times I took my kids to somewhere and I go, it's time to go, guys. Time to get out of the pool. 5 more minutes. I don't want to. No. Just flat out no. Okay. All right. Now I can let them have their free will, but it isn't going to be helpful to them if I do. So we rein in the free will of a child. And what we hope we're teaching when we do that is self-discipline. You have to learn how to say no to that in you, which wants more time in the pool, but your fingers look like raisins and it's time for you to get out of the pool and dry out and warm up and maybe go home and have lunch. But so the self-discipline of managing our life is one of the lessons we learn. But I do think that the right of free will is sacred. And I think it's so sacred that love never violates it. Love never violates free will. It's a law of itself. And I don't know who gave that law to love. I suppose life did, or God did, or whatever the thing is that governs life itself. And I think it's governed, or it would be chaos. Without chaos in the universe, if you look up at night, it's like, holy mackerel. It's just like it looked last night. We didn't have all the stars crashing into each other. We wouldn't exist, would we? We'd last about a millisecond if the universe was chaos. So it's not. It's ordered evolution of something. And I think that ordered evolution is of love itself, personally. I think life's evolving, but the thing that life's evolving now, on our planet at least, is love. Because that's where we're failing. We're failing at love. Well, what's the consequence of failing at love? Well, take a look. Take a look at the planet. Take a look at China. Take a look at Syria. Take a look at Russia. Take a look at America. Take a look at any country and what's going on in it. And people are in the streets. People are creating chaos because we're not learning this lesson. We're not able to manage this energy in ourselves. So it would be a good idea if we defined it, empowered ourselves with it, and then maybe offered it as a way of life to other people. Well, somebody has to take that responsibility. Are you going to do it, Taylor, or are you going to wait for somebody else to do it?
I'm going to do it, Dan.
That's right, you are. And when she says that, I believe her. What about you, Seb? Is that something you're going to do or something you're going to wish for and hope and watch from afar?
No, it's saying I'm going to do.
Okay, well, I wish I was as confident because at my age, and I still haven't done it fully, I have to say to myself, is this because it's hard or because I'm really remedial? Which is both, I think. I mean, I honestly look at my life. Maybe neither. Maybe it's just not time yet, you mean? Like cakes rising or something?
No, I mean, maybe, we talked about, the confusion that surrounds it. Maybe it's just a matter of sorting out and applying that pattern and alignment with it to yourself. And
well, alignment,
I think fine tuning. Maybe it's just a little fine tuning.
Well, having been through my life, I've been at this since I was 5. 5 is when I started realizing the consequences of things. And since then, I've been through a lot of experiences, but all of this time since then to now has been to understand how to overcome those consequences, how to change the nature of those consequences in the world. And the thing I found out and figured out at some point in time was that it's love that does that. Love is the ingredient that I need in my nature in a fully empowering way in order for that to be overcome. Now, it wasn't something I discovered yesterday, and I'm still working on that empowerment. But what I've decided over time, and failing to do it to my own satisfaction, was that it can be learned and taught. That the more we do it, the more humanity takes the responsibility to learn what love is and how to empower ourselves with it, and then offers that lesson to others, the easier it will become, to the point that others can learn it quite easily and quite naturally, and it can eventually teach it in a school. Now, the fact that there's something in life that doesn't love love is also fairly apparent. And you can think, what is it that's angry at love? Well, something is, because if you take I had the experience of going past an empty lot that was on a property in Silver Lake, because I had a recording studio over in Silver Lake, and I would go by this property every few days because it was a street that I didn't travel every day, but it was in a neighborhood. And there had been an old house on this property, and whoever had owned this old house had money. And they had bought a piece of art from Europe somewhere, because I don't think it was manufactured in this country. And it was a carved marble statue of a woman sitting on a lion. And it had been left in this lot. Now, the house was gone, but the lot was kind of up on a hill, so it had been sort of ignored. And I drove by one day and I saw that and I went, oh my God, that is a incredible piece of art. And it was in pristine shape, considering it was probably done a long time ago. I don't know when it was carved, but it was carved by somebody who knew how to do it really well, because it was beautiful. And I'm a fool for art. And I kept scheming with myself. I actually tried to find out who owned it. And I did track it down because I was good at that stuff. But I couldn't get to an agreement. I had to get to an agreement to take possession of the art so that I could move it off of that lot, because I could see what the consequences were going to be. And the last time I went by that property, the head is gone off the woman. The lion has been painted, spray painted, defaced, damaged. So it's now a rock, slowly deteriorating. And there's something that doesn't love beauty. So when it sees beauty, it harms it if it can. Now, that's an energy in life. We see the effect of that everywhere. And it's painful. It was painful to me because I could see the consequences of it coming. I even thought, and I couldn't steal the damn thing, or I would have. I would have stolen the thing without a backward look. But it's up on a hillside on a property. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get a tow truck in there? Because the thing has got to weigh, 800 pounds minimum. But I had other things going on in my life at the same time. But that was important to me for a while, when I was scheming how to get it saved, how to save this beauty from destruction. But I couldn't do it. Didn't know how. I didn't have the money, didn't have the resources, didn't have whatever the hell it took. Maybe enough courage. I don't know. But it shows you that, it was a real evidence to me that, yes, there is something that doesn't love beauty, or maybe just doesn't notice it. But I think it's more than not noticing. If you put the Mona Lisa in the park, it'll be destroyed in no time. And why destroy it? Well, there's something in certain people that when they see something like that, they have to go wreck it. They have to harm it. They have to put their mark on it. And that's an energy in us that demonstrates the absence of love to me. That's all that demonstrates. There's no reality to hatred. There's no reality to anger. There's no reality to evil, except the absence of love. Intelligence and will without absent love And then it becomes something else when intelligence and will absent love decides to harm beauty. That's a thing that we all see. And there's no antidote for that except love, as far as I can see. You can try to stop it. You can try to control it. You can try to protect things from it. You can put a fence around it. But the only absolute cure is love, which is why, one of the reasons why I work at it. And so I think sometimes you can define love by the absence of it, but it won't show it to you. That won't give you a working definition of it. But we know the way over here on one side is this absence of love, and way over here on the other side is love. So how do we get these two together? And love itself will transform and transmute and fill that void of love with love, and then the absence of it disappears, and we have not destroyed something, we've created something. We've created the presence of love where it was absent. And if we do that with ourselves, just with each of us, then that which is in us that is not love disappears. No matter what it is, whether it's fear or anxiety.
You can almost mic drop.
Yeah, that's how you're going. You're rolling that way.
Well, it's just like, bam.
Yeah, why not?
That's it.
You have to.
It's like you don't even have to meet it halfway. Just come in a little bit, love them, come together.
Meet you. It will. It absolutely will. So maybe we don't have to define it. Maybe we have to zero in on it. But it's like asking you to shoot at a target that you can't see. If I tell you to go outside and shoot something in the sky, I've got to point at something for you to shoot. Otherwise, you're just blasting randomly in any direction. And so...
Well, it's hard to define some things in language. I mean, it has its limits. It's hard to define God. It's hard to define the soul. It's hard to define love. And it's... because everybody has their own interpretation of every word used in language. And so to, pigeonhole it into a definition is... I mean,
we
love
have to
could
do
it.
Well,
but
you know what?
I don't know if we can.
You're telling me how difficult it is, but I don't think so.
I don't know about difficult, but I mean, to define it means it's definite. It's like this one thing that we could say about it makes it definite. I just don't know if that...
Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with defining it. I mean, I'm asking you to do something, but in the end, we're not going to. Because when you define something, you put it into your intellect. And the intellect itself is void of love. It doesn't have a capacity for love. It has a capacity for definitions. What's a glass of water? Well, it's a cylinder that holds a certain amount of water in it. What's water? Well, it's hydrogen and oxygen combined. So you can define a lot of things, but that doesn't create them, does it? But so I think that embracing love in a tangible way, in a way that gives you the sensation of it, is the best we can hope for until it defines us with it to a point where we become deeper and deeper into our appreciation of it. And eventually, I think we finally then come to a sensation of realization that we are love. There is no separation between us and love. And then you define yourself. And even that may be difficult when you get to that level, because then you're God, aren't you? Then you're the universe itself. Then you're life. Then what, so it's kind of accurate. It's kind of a moving scale, but we have to zero in on this invisible property of life that has this incredible capacities in it, and allow it. And then based on our measurement of it, increase it to a greater measurement. And based on our contact and experience with it, begin to define how we want to relate to it. So, and that sounds like, oh, well, that's impossible to do, but no, it's not. You got used to gravity when you crawled around on your hands and knees and suddenly said, this is hard. I keep falling down. What's wrong? I can't walk. Well, yes, you can. Just practice. Your legs get stronger. You start to practice. we never did figure out that it was gravity when we were babies, but we learned how to walk. And love is going to be the same kind of a deal. You're going to understand its reality inside of you and then adapt yourself to that reality in an increasing way so that it empowers you in a greater and greater empowerment, and then see the impact of that on your life. And as you see the impact of love on your life coming through you, with you, then we decide we want more of that. I want to go deeper in that relationship. I want that to become an inexhaustible supply, which it can certainly do because it is inexhaustible and it's available. So if we proceed in that direction, increasing all of our experiences with it as best we can and defining it, expanding that definition, going deeper into it and allowing it, and then examining what happens in our life as we allow the empowerment of it, we're going to come to a place where that becomes a through line for our experience, I think. Now, I'm interested in doing that because I have had enough experience with love to realize that's probably reasonably accurate in terms of a long-term goal.
No, I think it is. And I think, I mean, yes, I mean, you have to feel it and perceive it, and it has to prove itself to you. But what I like about defining it, even though it is an intellectual process, is, you know, earlier when you asked me about the definitions of love, I had to go to my intellect to remember, you know, what we, you know, previously talked about and what we defined as love. But as I kind of and badly remembered those things because I haven't had enough sleep, but as I went to my intellect and put them out, they were just words that I was putting out.
Right.
But once I put them out, it started to open up what those things were, and it started to show me what those things are in love. It gave me the experience from just taking them from words from my intellect and then putting them there. It then opened up the experience for me of where that's true, and that gave me the interaction, the feeling with it, and so it's giving you that direction to actually get the knowing of it, the relationship with it. So I think it helps you, you know, get the arrow down to the target. So,
well, in our game that we're in, that's about all you've got. You've got that inner desire for it. You've got the aspiration for it. So you're going to pursue that. You're going to make choices that are consistent with that. But if you really take a moment before we exit this part of our conversation to let love join you, just let it join you right now, right here. It's everywhere. It's not something we have to go find somewhere. It's already present, more present than that setting sun, because the sun outside is setting because the earth is rotating away from that direction. And so it's going to disappear into the ocean in Taylor's case because she's in the middle of the ocean. But love's not doing that. Love's not setting and rising. It's constantly here and constantly increasing in us in terms of tangibility and appreciation of it. I think every human being today, every single one, even those assholes, has more love in them than they ever did at any other time in the human race. Now, that's an argument we could all have, and I'm not saying that the people locked up in prison don't deserve to be there. But when I look back at the human race in its earliest days, you realize we were a little rough around the edges. We didn't hesitate. We didn't hesitate to kill somebody. Sometimes we ate them after we did. So, or anything else, by the way. We were still pretty good at killing things that don't deserve it. But we've become beings of sensitivity to other things. So we try not to kill our friends and neighbors. We try not to kill the things that we need to support our life. I mean, generally speaking, we're becoming people who have more respect for other living things than we used to. That's about all I can say about that, because we got a long ways to go. But I think that that's growth in love. In any other dimension, it's growth in love. We're learning how to love things other than just ourselves. I don't even think we love ourselves very much yet, because that comes along with the love. So what you're saying, Seb, is true. We're going to just constantly increase, but I think it's possible to really dial this up in
Mm.
yourself. You can't dial it up for anyone else because of that very thing you brought up, free will. The obedience to free will is one of love's greatest assets. And it's humility towards other life, a reverence towards life. If we have the reverence and humility towards each other that love does, then we might treat each other better, because love waits for you. It can afford to. It's running a universe that isn't going anywhere. So love can wait. And when you come to it, there it is, all around you, inside you, ready for a deeper relationship with life, with this quality of life, this aspect of life that is called love is there. It's immense, enormous, intelligent, loving. So if we bring it in to this space that we're in right now, then we have the responsibility to engage with it. But if we're asking others to engage with it, to find it in their space, then we have to work at that ourselves. I have to try to show love to you from inside me in order to expect you to do that with anything else. I think if we did more of that, we would have less priests that cause problems and more teachers of love that demonstrate right relationship to it. And maybe the Buddhists are pretty good at this. The Buddhists kind of live by their law. They know that compassion towards others is a fundamental of this practice. And compassion means not violating other people's free will, which is really hard to do when you're getting abused by others. I know Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a famous Buddhist and one of my favorite people, because he was in Vietnam the same time I was, in the same place. His little monastery was down the road from where we were blowing everything up. But he was a pacifist. A Buddhist, as a pacifist, wasn't very popular in the middle of a war zone, because the Vietnamese wanted him to join their side, and the North Vietnamese wanted him to join their side. The Americans wanted him to join their side, and everybody wants you to go to war in a war. There are no conscientious objectors on a battlefield that are not abused by everybody else. So he took a lot of abuse, and he survived it all, and never wavered from his position of harmlessness and humility, and became a great man for it, in my estimate. And then after the war, the North Vietnamese were so pissed off at him that for not taking sides, that they kicked him out of the country, which was one of their greatest treasures. But they weren't thinking about love or Buddhism or compassion. So the French gave him a place, said, come over here and we'll give you a spot and you can turn it into something you want. So he built Plum Tree Village, which is a beautiful Buddhist, not just a temple, it's a Buddhist place of compassion and harmlessness. And it's an amazing place. And then he set one up in California, not far from where I was, and did the same thing. He's dead now, but he certainly did change the world while he was alive, and was a wonderful demonstration of love. And he was fascinating to look at and to watch and to see how he operated. But you had no doubt that he was convinced that this principle of love was something worth pursuing. And when you saw the impact that he had on life around him through that pursuit, you didn't question whether or not there was an energy at work here. It certainly is. And what you couldn't figure out is, why is it so easy for him and so hard for us? Well, maybe it wasn't easy for him. He went through hell.
That's what I was thinking. But he did it anyways.
He did it anyway, but it's these experiences of other people going through this stuff are really helpful to us because it will eventually come around to something that we all understand how to do. And then we'll be going, well, why didn't we do this earlier? This wasn't that hard to do. Love is not that hard to get along with. It treats you pretty good. And the power of it in us changes everything. Thich Nhat Hanh had a woman who was a policewoman. And she came to him one day and said, I have to quit. And he said, well, what do you mean you have to quit? And she said she was working for the police department of somewhere like Detroit. It's a tough place. And she said, well, I'm carrying around a gun. I'm a policeman, and I may have to use lethal force in my situation. And I'm having a conflict with being a Buddhist, which is harmlessness. And he looked at her and said, well, I understand. And he said, now listen, if you're going to be arrested, if you're going to be in conflict with someone, would you rather be in conflict with someone who respects love and harmlessness, or would you rather it were someone who doesn't? And she said, oh, well, I would. And he said, well, that's what you do then. You do the best you can to do your job in a way that's conformed with harmlessness and kindness. And she came back to him and said, I just want you to know, because she's stuck with the job. And she said, I had someone who got out of prison and came back to me and said, and thanked me. And I said, what? Thanked me for what? I arrested you and put you in prison. And he said, I know, but the way you did it, the way you treated me, the way you acted towards me made me realize that the problem was me. It wasn't society. It wasn't somebody else. It was me. And because I knew it was me, I knew I could change. I can't change society, but I can change my attitude. And he said, I just gave up any desire to be a criminal or have anything wrong with other people. And I just thank you for that, because I never would have done it. Now that's a tiny story of one of Thich Nhat Hanh's people. But that's love at work. And we know that. We see that that's love at work. So we're going to define it as we go along, best we know how. This is kind of a rush job, so I'm not considering it finished. Taylor's going to round it out for us next time.
No, but that's a beautiful story.
Oh, it is. It's true. That's what living that earned him, and it earned her, and it earned that criminal. And when you drop something into the water, the ripples just go and go and go and go and go, and we have no idea how far they go. And you have no idea how little someone needed to be able to make that step. She wasn't the only thing in his life that showed him that compassion. But it connected the dots to the realization that she wasn't just some other cop doing a job. She was this doesn't have meaning to you unless you can imagine her doing her job in the way that she's forced to do, because this guy's a criminal, but doing it with a decided desire for it to be helpful to him, positive to him, harmless to him. And that's profound. And I get that. I've seen that act. I've seen a single act of kindness cause that kind of result in the world myself. So I think it's important for us to take these things to heart and try to find a way in which we can balance this power to define love so that we can have it, along with our ability to do it and love's ability to work through us and empower us with it. And it's a miraculous thing. And this is how I want to finish what we're doing. And you guys can finish any way you want, but this is how I want to finish it, is this understanding that until you possess love in you, as you, with you, doing this work with you, like Thich Nhat Hanh did, like his protege did, you won't see its powers, because they're not in us until we have it. You can't do transformation You can't make something. Jesus maybe turned water into wine, but you can't. But love apparently can, if the story's correct. So transformation is a thing. Transmutation is a thing. Transfiguration is the changing of ourselves, like the criminal was being transfigured through love. And unity, which is a realization of our oneness together in love. It's love that unifies everything in the universe to the realization that we are all part of the same thing without losing your identity as a single thing. Unity and love does not destroy individuality. It adds to it. And it gives your individuality the power of love to be individual. It's really an amazing thing when you start to consider what the gifts are. So until we have those gifts, we don't know what it means. But when we have them, then we start to realize, oh, I didn't have these gifts. But now that I have love in me, I do have these gifts because love is consistently giving them to my life through me because I'm accepting my relationship to it. And it's a relationship to the thing itself. And then you see this in a religion like Christianity, it turns into being converted to a relationship with a person or an idea of a person or an idea of God. But it's the love itself, the living presence of that energy that is the gift of all of that. And if you look at the Buddhist conversation, it's a different type of relationship, but it still comes to the same thing. Most of these things that are bringing us into unity with life as it really is being lived are different conversations about not to attach us to an ism or a belief or a religion or a God or something else, but to bring us into compassionate relationship with love and change us into an expression of something that already is going on in the universe because life intends it to happen. Anyway, that's why we're going to work on empowering people with it, because I think it's quite simple for them to do once they want to. You got to want to and be committed to doing it. And then it starts to open up like crazy. Taylor, are you in for this, or are you just going to go out and harvest some chickens? Because I can hear one out there talking to you, calling you.
I'm in. Even if I harvest a chicken, it'll be with this.
Who's counting the odd chicken?
Thank you, guys. Thank
Seb,
you very much.
Aside from needing some sleep, which I know you do, Seb does this with us on 4 or 5 hours sleep, and after a period of time he starts to get a little punchy, but he's the guy that runs the tech, so we drag him in anyway. We could do this without him, but we don't want to because he's running the tech.
Someone's got to click the button. But no, I'm in, Dan.
I know that. And that doesn't mean we're any good at this, by the way.
No.
But that's the challenge, to be at it, whether you're good at it or not. Yeah. We know that Christ is good at it.
As long as we're at it.
Yeah. But we will get better at it.
Yeah, we will. Yes, we will.
We can't get worse. So.
Well, if the Buddha got better at it, and I assume he did because he finally off he went to wherever he is now, and the Christ got better at it. If you get so good at it, then they'll nail you up to something. But he got good at it anyway. So we know that other people ahead of us, and there, by the way, the list is quite long. We have featured people, but there's a lot of humanity has really put themselves to the test of love and won. And we don't know their names, but they did. And they had tremendous, and we can talk about some of them sometime because I know a few of them, and some of them are spiritual masters and some of them are just previous people all the way back to Hercules or somebody like that we think of as a myth. But he wasn't a myth. He was a man and did something so memorable that we remember him in myth because it was that long ago. And he's considered by a lot of the spiritual people to be one of the 3 or 4 or 5 people worth remembering, which means he had to do something really significant, which we'll talk about sometime, because it has everything to do with love. So anyway, that's where we are with it today.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I have to leave you.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you all.
My
We do
motherly
too.
duties demand.
Yes, I'm quite certain they're tugging at your apron strings.
Right. I'll do my tech duties and I'll push the button, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
Don't you wanna know about love? Wanna know love? Don't you wanna know? Don't you wanna know about love? Wanna know